Hi, welcome to a special edition of Fourth Quarter Live. Now, it's not football season, but for most people, everybody knows that I'm a big Celtics fan. So I'm jumping in here, Fourth Quarter Live for the Celtics, even though it's about 3 minutes to go into the third quarter. I'm here. My co-host is Chuck McKenney from Red's Army. Chuck, man, what the hell is going on here?
Wiggy, I'm blaming you.
Right.
They've had so many disastrous second quarters. I feel like every 2 weeks we say that's the worst I've seen them play in the second quarter, and I think tonight we've reached an even lower level. I mean, they've just had colossal failures collectively, individually. The defense has been an absolute train wreck, right? They can't hit open shots, and then of course we're also treated to that little bitch fest between Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown, when Smart was upset that Jaylen didn't pass him the ball when he was open on the wing. So it's been like this perfect mix of everything that's been a problem for the Celtics all year came to a boil in that second quarter. And, you know, one of the bigger games. We want to go into Toronto and show them that we still have something left. And here we are. We're down 22 with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. Just an absolute disaster.
Well, the one thing that I saw, Chuck, I thought, I can't remember the number, but the Raptors were on like a 36-13 run in that like second quarter, something ridiculous. Now, if you want to join us, just jump on the fan line. You can join us, in the upper right-hand corner. Jump in, voice your complaints, your opinions about this game. This thing here is an absolute shit show. It won't be long before the Celtics decide to just kind of throw in the towel with this game. And I had thought that the Celtics, I thought this was going to be a good test for them, going to Toronto, showing everybody that, hey, if they had to see Toronto in the postseason, that it would be a tough matchup. And I actually thought they would be able to beat them. But after this performance here, man, it's just, this team here is an absolute joke.
Yeah, they've had they've had some competitive games with Toronto, but to follow up that disaster in Chicago, right, against the Bulls, I think, you tried to chalk that one up to, well, the Celtics play down to terrible teams, but they'll be up for Toronto because that's what they do. But then to come out here in that second quarter and just throw everything away, just really makes me question this team. And I know I've probably said that 3 or 4 times a month. And I try to just think that they'll eventually flip the switch. But if they're not flipping the switch for big games, what makes me think they're going to do that in the playoffs? And it's the same shit. It's the same shit that's bugging them. It's that second unit. It's Terry Rozier. It's Gordon Hayward.
Right.
Just non-factors. And then when some starters don't play to their best ability, it exposes the Celtics. There's no help from that bench.
Right. And this is what I said. I do mornings with Mutton Callahan on WEI, and I said probably about 2 weeks ago, and I kind of felt like this for a minute. I like Brad Stevens as a coach. I think he knows the X's and O's. But at this point, I was saying after the year, I think it's time to move on from Brad Stevens. I know a lot of people don't like that. I mean, it is what it is. I just when you look at this team and you look at the talent that they have on this team, and you look at what they were last year and you look at where they are this year, I know there's a portion of that that's on the players' shoulders, but I also I feel like as a coach, we never hold Brad accountable. And I just feel like when you look at the talent that he's had around him with this team, he just can't get those guys to buy into the system, or he doesn't really know how to manage the egos of the NBA. And that's why, I've been one of the guys that's like, hey, if they don't go on a deep run in the postseason, I'm ready for the next guy to come in and see if they can do something with this team.
I say you're 90% right. I think, for most of his time in Boston, he's taken less talented teams and they've overperformed, right? And this is the first year where he's really had a stacked roster with legit finals expectations. And he has 100% underperformed. A lot of the chemistry issues, I think you have to factor in factor in some blame for him, especially at this point of the season where he really seems to refuse to make any sort of changes. He continues to roll out Rozier. The players are still doing, they still have their same responsibilities. So, and I'm seeing it on Twitter. More fans are getting PO'd with Brad. They're coming down on him for not shaking up the rotations, for not calling timeouts when the other teams are going on these monster runs. And Brad was, he was like Teflon. There was nothing that stuck to him before this season. So the tide's definitely turning on that. But I will not go as far as to say, if they fail this year, that's it for Brad. I would like to think they're going to give him a little bit more. I think that's a bit of a rush.
But I look at it like this, right? They've given this guy, he's been here, 6 years now? And granted, he's turned this team around. Well, even when they had Isaiah Thomas, think about this. For the past 5 years or so since he's been the head coach of this team, they've always been, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of a lot of people, even with Isaiah Thomas, they've always been the second best team in the East. Obviously when it was Isaiah Thomas, LeBron and Kyrie were on Cleveland. So, you got to say, hey, listen, if they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals, it's going to be very difficult to beat that team, but you expect them to be there. Now when you look at what they were able to do last year, going 7 games in the Eastern Conference Final, losing to a Cleveland team without Kyrie Irving, and now you come into this season thinking like, okay, they got all the pieces. Now Gordon Hayward, to me, he's kind of like a throwaway right now because you don't know mentally how he's been able to overcome the ankle. But to have the team that you had coming back last year, you incorporate Kyrie. And for people to say, like, oh, Kyrie's the issue, they're out of their mind because Kyrie was with their team last year till the last 15 games of the season. And they were, the best team, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. So he knows how to play with Kyrie. The problem that I think is now the egos of the young players, the Jaylen Browns, the Terry Roziers, Tatum to a certain extent, Marcus Morris, those egos, Kyrie Irving, being able to have those egos and kind of being able to manage them and put that team out on the court and have that team night in and night out want to play for you, want to go to the wall for you. And I just don't see it. As Matt says, here's a comment for Matt. The problem is Kyrie. He's going to be gone next year. But I don't get why people say, explain to me how Kyrie's the problem, or at least get me to see that a little bit. To me, he's your best player. Without Kyrie, this team is probably, an 8 seed if they're the way that they're playing.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I don't put much blame on Kyrie. Statistically on the court, he's having one of his best seasons. He's ridiculously efficient. He's such a fantastic offensive player. And up until like maybe the last week or so, he was really playing the best defense of his career. So I don't understand. I think we've seen some games, the Celtics young guys, they made a push last year with Irving out. And then I think they've had some success when Kyrie sat this year, but they played, in some of those games, they played shit teams. I just don't put any stock in that. I think the criticism for Irving is more about leadership style, right? Too vocal, too critical, at least publicly, in the media with the young guys. And I don't think that's helped. I did like, last week or maybe it was a few days ago, it's all a blur. But when he started to say, you know what, we're going to be fine, we're going to flip the switch, he just kind of brushed off a loss and wanted to keep moving forward. So I want him here. I hope he's here. I think the Celtics are going to try to, they're going to give him that 5-year, $180 million. They want him here. Part of this too is about Danny Ainge, right? So we thought the Celtics were going to have all this depth and all these pieces were going to fit. But I think before the trade deadline, we knew Rozier wasn't working out, and Ainge still refused to make that move. So I just feel like we've seen all the problems. I'll give Brad a little bit of slack, but there's going to be a lot of roster turnover in the offseason. The Celtics aren't going to be running with these guys, especially if they go after Anthony Davis. So there's pressure on Ainge to kind of find the right pieces, right? You can't just have a team of all these up-and-coming players mixed with – there needs to be the right mix. And I don't give Brad all of the blame for that. Some of it falls on Danny.
Well, I understand that point. Megan, she says here, how far can this team go with Hayward playing the way he is right now? I almost feel like with Gordon Hayward, right, whatever you can get out of him, you get out of him, right? I mean, I don't look at him as being like the guy that's going to put you over that hump, or he's going to be the guy he's the reason why you're not able to get over the hump. I look at this team and what I see with this team, and I think a lot of people, the whole Kyrie thing, I think it's mainly because of him saying, you know, I want to be in Boston, I want to be here long term, and then him kind of, you know, walking that back and then going, well, you know what, talk to me July 1st. So I think that's the biggest issue with Kyrie Irving right now. If Kyrie was on a long-term extension and the Celtics were playing the way that they're playing, I don't think anybody would be complaining about Kyrie. I think they would be like, get this guy the help that he needs. I see what you say. I see what you said about Danny, and I agree with that a little bit because I think that they knew that this team, especially with Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier, were having issues, that they should have moved on from those guys during the trade deadline. And then you would at least, because you know there's issues in that locker room when you're talking about Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier, whether that's with Kyrie Irving, whether that's with Marcus Morris, they should have said, you know what? They're an issue in that locker room. It's an issue with playing time because, you know, they're upset that Hayward's playing. They should have moved on from those guys and said, here's how a team's going to look moving forward, minus two guys that have an issue what's going on in that locker room.
So let me ask you this, right? So, you know, I thought that they would just eventually overcome those locker room issues, but they seem to continue to crop up. I mean, obviously you played, so you know, I mean, it's probably much different in football. But I just thought eventually they would overcome it, right? And I mean, if guys dislike each other or dislike their roles, I mean, is it really going to manifest on the court or the field? I mean, can you give me a little insight into, like, I'm sure there were guys you didn't like. I mean, how does that manifest when you're actually, you know, playing the game?
Well, but I think football is completely different than basketball, right? You know, as football players, you know, we knew that we didn't have to get along. There were plenty of guys that weren't buddies, but it was like, hey, listen, you know what? Just do your job and go out there, and that's all I care about. When you get an opportunity, take advantage of it, make plays. See, I think the difference is where in football, you know, with basketball, you're like the playing time is more of an issue. You know what I mean? If you're not really friends with the offensive tackle and you're a wide receiver, it's no big deal. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, you know, he might not be somebody I rock with, but he does his job. I do my job. We're winning. We're happy. That's all that matters. We don't need to
He's not getting your minutes. Yeah.
Right. We don't need to go out and crack a bear. Like you said, he's not getting your minutes. In basketball, it's completely different, right? Because, you know, in basketball, a player got to get a rhythm. But if they're trying to get Gordon Hayward back into it because they paid him a ton of money, and they're trying to get him a rhythm, and by trying to get him a rhythm, it's costing Jaylen Brown minutes, right? Yeah. And now Terry Rozier ain't getting the same minutes he's getting because of Kyrie, but Terry Rozier was there last year with Kyrie. But I think the problem was last year when Kyrie was there before he got hurt, Rozier was a role player. Then when he got hurt, Rozier became more of this guy that was took on more of a bigger role. Right. And he wasn't able to go back to being a role player. Yeah. And so that's where his frustration comes from. So at the end of the day, when you look at this team, no one really wants to buy into their roles. Everybody thinks that their roles should be bigger. They don't like this. In football, you know, there's really nobody's eating into your minutes like that. And that's the difference, you know.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
Basketball, it's about 2 or 3 players on the team, and then everybody else kind of buying into their role. But with the Celtics team, can you clearly define any role. I mean, think about this. There are people out here saying what Max is saying. Marcus Smart and Marcus Morris need to be benched. Jeff, I mean, at times I feel that way about Marcus Smart with some of his shot selection more than anything. Jeff, why do I feel like the entire season and the future? Because Kyrie, it just depends on whether they get hot heading into the playoffs. I think going into the postseason, it's going to be difficult if they keep, if they don't put themselves in a good position where they're going to have to, potentially, end up the 5 seed, or if they don't end up the 3 seed, that means more games are going to have to go on the road. And just when you look at this team, man, my biggest thing is I just don't think that these guys are buying into, or even if they know what type of role that they're supposed to have on this team.
Yeah, the only thing I will say, I mean, if they remain stuck in the 5th seed, which seems reasonable or probable, they do have, for some reason, the matchup is favorable with Philly, and Philly is in the 4th seed. So a 4-5 matchup with us on the road, I still think the Celtics could come together enough to beat Philly.
Right, but do you see this? Like, are you satisfied beating Philly and losing in the second round if you're a Celtics fan?
No, absolutely not. But I've scaled back all of my expectations. I mean, I thought this team would win 65 games. I figured they would be number 1, number 2 seed. I expected them to get to the finals and really challenge Golden State. So absolutely not. I mean, I've had to scale all that back considering what we've witnessed. But to respond to some of the comments that we've seen, I think Hayward's awfully important, right? I think, shifting him to that second unit, he becomes one of the primary scorers and facilitators. And we've seen him. Like, he had that 26-point game against Philly in that victory, I don't know, last week or right before the All-Star break. He's had some big games against Minnesota. So we've seen what he can do. But, man, he's only good for and I know he's trending in the right direction slowly when you look at the monthly averages. But at this point, I expected him to be much better, and I still think that this team needs him, right? We need him with all these young guys still sorting out their roles. I just thought Hayward would be a little bit more consistent, and I guess I'm underestimating the impact mentally that injury took on him, and I guess my expectations weren't fair. But man, he's been tough. He's been tough.
Right, but see, the reason why I kind of give Hayward a pass, and I'm kind of like, hey, it is what it is. Whatever you get out of him, is because you could clearly see that mentally the injury is something that he's having a hard time overcoming and dealing with, and it was such a horrific injury, and I understand that portion of it. But when I look at Hayward, I think, if he plays well, he's just a bonus. You look at this team minus Hayward, or just whatever you get from Hayward, him kind of being like the dressing on the salad. Yeah. Or the icing on the cake, whatever you want to call it. When you look at this team, the bigger issues are, in my opinion, what are these guys' roles? Like, Jaylen Brown, what's his role? And in his mind, he thinks his role is bigger than what it is. And Brad doesn't know how to handle that. He doesn't know how to cultivate those egos. He doesn't know how to cultivate Terry Rozier's egos. Kyrie Irving's frustration. I mean, Kyrie's speaking out because he's frustrated, because he probably felt like a lot of us that, hey, this team was going to be better. And now he probably walks into a team of like, hey, we did it without you. We kind of really don't need you. Why am I not playing more? So I think when you look at this team moving forward, and you got to stop, I put a huge portion of the blame on the coach, because the coach in basketball has to cultivate egos. It's about the players on the floor, but it's about making sure that those players on the floor, those egos are in check. And Brad just hasn't been able to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't really argue that. I love Jaylen. I think he's, since like Christmas, his play has been really strong. I thought he's found his sort of mark on the bench. But but he's not enough to kind of elevate that whole unit. I mean, we've just seen so much terrible play from the second stringers collectively, right? Defensively, sometimes Tice is a disaster, and Hayward is like he's the invisible man. And I know you want some slack, but he's still out there, and he's still a critical part of the bench, right? And then Rozier, right? So Rozier is really he's like public enemy number one, I think, for most Celtics fans. He is just completely underperformed. And he can be very hard to watch when he's over dribbling and not executing like simple pick and rolls, finding the right guy. I mean, yeah, Marcus Smart has a rough shot selection, but Rozier, man, he's just as maddening. And at least Smart brings it with the hustle and the defense. So there's just and again, it's really like a regression from a lot of guys, right? It's like Rozier's scaled way back. Hayward, there's been nothing. Tatum hasn't necessarily elevated himself as much as we thought, right? After the playoffs last year, we were like, this dude is a freaking superstar. And I think he's kind of been treading water a bit.
Let me ask you a quick question. Let me ask you this quick question. Hey, if you want to jump in, make sure you jump in on the fan line in the top right-hand corner of your screen. So jump on in. Chuck, let me ask you this question, right? Let's forget this game because this game is an absolute ass-whooping.
Yeah.
Who knows what this team's going to be able to do in the postseason? What do they do moving forward to get them back to where we want to see them, where I want to see them, is in the NBA Finals? I think it's Anthony Davis. I think they have a good chance of getting him. I'm willing to sell the farm for Anthony Davis. What do you think is the way to go for the Celtics to get back to not contending for the Eastern Conference Finals, but being in a position where they can make the NBA Finals?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm a big fan of Davis. So I'm all about. I think the first step is you get Irving to re-sign, and you do that by telling him, we're trading everybody for Davis. We're going to get you that legitimate number 2 stud. And in a perfect world.
Now, let me ask you something. You're one of those people who think Kyrie won't come back, or is like more leaning towards leaving?
No, I think he's going to come back. I still take him at his word at what he said at the beginning of the year, and call me silly, but seeing that father and the banners, and he really bought in. He wanted to have his number raised, and I think he was sincere. I think he wants that. He's still the number 1 guy here, right? So I just feel like there's been some turmoil, and look, Kyrie doesn't like the media. He hates all that social media bullshit and all the hype about free agency. So I think a lot of times the media wants him to answer questions, and his answers are a big sort of like, F you, more so than what he's saying. So I think he's going to come back, because I think Ainge is going to say, we're going to give you $180 million. I'm going to go all in on Anthony Davis. And I think that'll be a big selling point for Kyrie, and it'll also be a big, selling point for Davis when he gets here to sign the extension. I think the key is, what do you have to give up to get, Davis, right? Does it have to be Tatum and Brown and Smart? Does it have to be all 3 of those guys? Hopefully not. In the perfect world, you keep Tatum, and it's Brown, it's Smart, it's all those draft picks. But more likely, you're going to have to give up Tatum. But if you can keep Brown, right, and then you still have some young guys, they're going to have to move some salary around, with Hayward or Horford, right? It's a little tricky there with all those numbers. But for me, I'm with you. I think it's, when you get Kyrie to re-sign, you go all in on Davis, and then you put all your chips in on those 2 guys, and I think you fill the roster. I think that's the way to go. I mean, if you don't go that route, then you're running this team back with Kyrie. Even if with Kyrie coming back, and then you're like, okay, well, this year was such a disaster. Who are we going to move out of here? Right. And it becomes a little trickier for Danny Ainge to figure out. Well, Rozier's gone for sure, right? But it's like, okay, Horford, is he gonna take his option? What are we gonna do with So I think it's murky. But Davis is the quickest path. For sure.
And that's what I've been hopping on, and I'm like this. I'll send everybody to the airport. It doesn't matter to me. Everybody except Kyrie. If that means Tatum, Brown, draft picks, Rozier, Smart, whoever you need to package in that to get Davis, because I think once you have Davis and Kyrie, you can build pieces around it. I mean, that's just kind of how you see how the NBA nowadays is. All you need is two superstars. You can build a few pieces around. You can make a midseason trade for another guy. But like when you look at this season, I'm not writing the season off, but I am definitely, I felt like the Celtics still were, one of those teams that could win the Eastern Conference. But after the showing tonight and just kind of like how the season's been, and I know Kyrie said it, and I think Kyrie can turn it on, but I don't know if the rest of that, the rest of those guys around him, like, can turn it on. I don't know Jaylen Brown, what, and then I don't know even what type of role Jaylen's going to have. I know Sam says here, Jaylen and Terry both need to accept that they've played themselves into the roles that they're in. I agree with that. But what, what is that role? You know what I mean? It's like you kind of know what Kyrie is. And I know Marcus Smart isn't in some respect. It's just play good defense and, don't take stupid shots. Al Horford's kind of your big man who wants to facilitate, pass the ball a little bit. But I just feel like when I look at this team, I don't know if everybody, even Hayward to a certain extent, Marcus Morris, if everybody knows what their roles are. And moving forward into the postseason, I think that's going to be an issue because, you shorten your bench in the playoffs and guys have to kind of take on their roles and they have to be kind of they have to be more determined. So when they go out there, they know exactly what they need to do. Those roles got to be more defined. And I just feel like Brad doesn't have a handle on it. I think he's lost this team.
I think with their offense, right, they're really just based around a lot of ball movement, right? I don't think we see necessarily too many, aside from, Irving and Horford running their pick and rolls and pick and pops. I don't think we see a lot of like design plays for Tatum, right? I think he would be another guy that you talked about. It's like, he's the budding superstar, right? If anything, he could come and say, I need 5 more shots a game. I'm not getting enough touches. Because there were fourth quarters where I'm thinking, shit, Tatum hasn't taken a shot. Like, what's going on here? So for me, it's more about, can he assert himself, right? Because he needs to be that guy. But it's just, I think, the way the offense is structured. These guys are constantly moving the ball. I'd rather see Morris was really good most of the year. He's starting to regress. But I'd really like to see Tatum kind of try to assert himself more offensively to help.
Which he doesn't do. And there are times when you do see that, like you said, he is. You'd like to see him play more like Morris, where Morris asserts himself offensively, or even Mark to a certain extent. The problem, like I said, the problem is when you Tatum, and I don't know what he's being told, and this is why it goes back to Brad, because in the NBA, it's not it's about designing X's and O's here, and I think he's really good at that. But I think Brad Stevens is a good coach that needs to be coaching a team that doesn't have superstars or potential superstars. I think he's more like what we saw from him last year, because he didn't have Kyrie. I mean, he did have Kyrie, but into the postseason, he had to kind of work the way he had to work to get these guys to go. But now he's got egos, and I think that he's having an issue being able to manage egos. And a big part of the NBA as a coach is being able to manage egos and manage the superstars.
Yeah, no doubt. And even when he was at Butler, right, he had success there, but he was never coaching, any guys who were surefire lottery picks.
Lucky,
So that's fair. I just would be willing to give him a little bit more slack, and and see where he can go, because I think most of the guys do speak highly of his ability to draw up plays, X and O's. You know, he's sound in that regard, but he's clearly has issues there. So, again, it's the superstars league, right? So if Kyrie, you know, likes Brad and Kyrie's here and they make the move for Davis,
I'm
right?
fine with that. I'm fine with that. If they make the moves for Davis and they want to keep Brad around, all right, I'll give him a year with Davis and Kyrie, but I expect results out of that. Like I said, this is the kind of the first year that we've seen Brad with kind of superstars or ego guys. You know, let's call it what they are, because, you know, when you think about it, Brown, Rozier, you know, and I don't want to say Gordon Hayward's an ego guy, but he's a guy who's got paid a ton of money, right? So he's a max contract guy. You look at Tatum, who's a button superstar, like you said. Everybody knows about him. You got Kyrie. So here's a team where Brad now has these egos to manage, and I don't think he did a good job of managing them this year. Hopefully that'll change next season, because if they continue to kind of go down this route, which, you know, it looks like they're headed in that direction. You know, you say they end up 4 or 5 seed. There's still going to be issues with the egos there. And, you know, if they get bounced in the first round, very disappointing and very disappointing by this team with the talent they have. And now it's trying to figure out, where do we go from here?
Yeah, you know, I think we're lucky in that the teams behind them in the East, I think Brooklyn might be behind them. I think they're like 7 games back of Boston, or 5, 6. So Boston can't slide any further. I think 5 is as far as they can go. You know, God willing that they don't go into a huge tailspin. So that's to their benefit. You know, and there is, you know, Baines is going to come back. He's a huge part of this team's defense. I don't want to make it sound like he's any sort of Band-Aid. They still struggled when he was playing, but it would be nice to kind of get him back. And then again, it's on Brad to build some sort of rotation, right, for the playoffs, because he's not going to play 10, right? Usually you scale it back a bit. He might play 8, 9 at the most. So there are guys that are going to be, you know, falling out. So he's going to hopefully have time to sort that out. Again, like I said, I still feel good going against Philly if everybody's healthy. It's that second round where, you know, we win that, then we're playing. All right, so then we play Milwaukee if they're still the number 1 seed. They've been playing great. Giannis is fantastic. And I think maybe this is why there's a hint of optimism for me, is I still feel like Milwaukee is a one-man show. You know, Middleton has been good, but, you know, Adam Jones and I have talked about this. We feel like Milwaukee can be had. I'm more fearful about going into Toronto and beating Kawhi Leonard, who's won titles,
right,
than I would be going to Milwaukee, because some of those role players may cower a bit. So I think maybe that's why I'm holding on a tiny bit of optimism that we could get by Philly.
That depends on how the Celtics are playing, right?
Of course, yeah.
There's only been a handful of games where they actually showed us. I think the Golden State game that they played early in the season at the Garden, where, you know, they lost that game, but you looked at it, you go, you know what? Hey, if they can play like that, they can beat anybody, you know. And that's the issue. Is like the problem with this team is they're so inconsistent all around. Like you said, defensively, they're inconsistently. Scoring, they're inconsistent, especially when Kyrie comes off the floor. They have a hard time scoring the basketball. You know, and that becomes an issue, their inconsistency on how they play. You just don't know which team is going to show up. And now you're talking about a 7-game series. Now it's game to game. Who's going to show up? What team is going to show up? How's their defense? Is the second unit going to be able to score? It's just I agree with you. I think they got Philly's number. I think they should be able to win that series. I kind of agree with you as far as the Milwaukee Milwaukee series, a Milwaukee team. They are literally a one-man team as far as Giannis goes. And like you said, Middleton's a good player. But when you look at Toronto, they can come at you with Kawhi, Kyle Lowry,
now.
Yeah, Serge Ibaka. They got some guys that can make some things happen. So I think that obviously is going to be if they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals, or and it's against Toronto, it's going to be a very difficult matchup. But if they can get there, maybe I might take a little bit of my foot off of Brad's throat a little bit. If you can get this team, by the way they're playing, if he can get them to the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm still disappointed because I expect them to win. I expected them to be in the finals this year. But if he can get them there after the way that they're playing, and then hopefully, you can have a good postseason performance by Jaylen Brown, and now you can package Jaylen Brown up to move him. But I think New Orleans is going to want Tatum.
Yeah.
But I don't mind.
If you look at so now with this loss, I think they've lost 3 in a row, 5 out of 7. But this kind of fits the pattern, right? They've had these big dips, and then they rattled off, 7 wins in a row or 9 out of 10. So I still think that we're going to see that. They're going to go. They have to go out west, and they do have some tough games. They got to play Houston, then they're out west against Golden State. Sacramento's no pushover. The Lakers, and Clippers. So they do have to have some tough games, but I still think they'll come out of this little mini funk because that's just what they've done all season. So maybe we can find some things out, in the next couple of weeks.
But the problem though is when you lose a game, like if they lose to Toronto by 5 points, 2 points, 3 points, and it's one of those hard-fought games, and you're like, all right, here's why they lost. They missed this, whatever. But when you look at a game like this and they completely completely mollywopped, and you're like, what the hell? It's like they barely showed up. The game was competitive up to 34-33, and then it was like, see you later, here goes Toronto. And it's like, the competitiveness was gone. And now you kind of have to say to yourself, what the hell? I mean,
But do you think that bothers them? I mean, so they get waxed tonight, and then if they see Toronto again, do you think that they're thinking we can't beat these guys?
Well, I think mentally there's definitely something there. Especially up in Toronto, mentally, they go, hey, last time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, last time we played up in Toronto, they beat us by what? What's this? 92-116. I mean, I'm no math whiz, but what's that? Jesus.
No, they don't win often in Toronto. When we beat them once this year, it was in Boston. So yes, there is that hurdle on the road. I guess for me, it's like when I see these sorts of complete disaster of a performance, I just think, you know what? Hopefully, it just rolls off their back. But
I don't think that team
really mean that.
See, I don't know. I don't think they're that team though, where it just rolls off their back, because there's so many issues, in the locker room, the way that they've been playing. I don't think they're that type of team. I think if anything, on a loss like this, you're gonna get this one was unhappy about his playing time. This one's complaining about this one. That's what you're gonna get.
No, that's fair, because I expected the Bulls loss to roll off their back, and then they come out here and they shit the bed again. So that's true, and especially the takeaway, we're gonna the media is gonna be all over them for the whole Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart chirping at each other. So suddenly the chemistry issue is back in the media again, and these guys are all dealing with questions about it. And it's like, not only can you not win in Toronto, and the bench sucks, but it's you guys still can't get along.
Right?
How hard is it to get along?
There's still that beef that's going on inside that locker room. There's been players-only meetings. There's been this. There's been that. I mean, tomorrow I'm on WEI on Mike Callahan, and I know that this is going to be a big part of the discussion. And for me, like I said, I put a lot of this on Brad Stevens, because you got to be able, as the coach of the team, manage the egos, manage the locker room, manage the dysfunction that's going on. You got to be able to take care of that stuff. So, and I think that's an issue that he's got to be able to take care of.
You know his personality, but I mean, at some point, is it just a matter of him saying, cut the shit, guys? I'm deciding this shit, cut the shit. But I don't see him having that sort of demeanor, of him just saying, do your job. I'll take care of the rest. You know what I mean?
Right. So
I don't think he's capable of that.
I'll tell you what, so this is my first time on, Fancred fourth quarter live during basketball season. It was a little bit better during football season.
We don't want you back, Wiggy. If you're bringing this shit, we don't want you back.
It's you know what, but make sure people come back, get the Fancred app to find out the next Celtics fourth quarter. Don't miss it. It'll be live. I mean, Chuck, at this point right now, what are we doing here? This game's over. Normally, hopefully you have better luck next time.
Yeah, we've exhausted the topics on this one. I mean, I'm sure I'll throw up. I'll be venting tomorrow on redsarmy.com with some thoughts from this game. But you're right. I think we've covered it all, and it didn't really give us much in the second half to even analyze. Right? It was just complete garbage time from halftime on. So, but. Put playing tomorrow. The Celtics are back tomorrow playing Portland. And I know we're not doing fourth quarter live, but this team gets right back on it. Pray to God that they're able to rebound against Portland.
So everybody, make sure you stay tuned to the Fancred app to find out when the next Celtics fourth quarter live will be on air. Listen, this horse is in the barn. This game is over. There's no need to kind of sit here and watch this shit show any longer. Chuck, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully next time we do this, the results will be a lot better. But until next time, this was fourth quarter live. We'll see you next time. Take care, man.